Hey everybody, Coach Ed here. I'm over here in the shop at Bella Italia, Marble, Granite, and Quartz, picking up my order for a nice little bathroom I'm doing. I've been a contractor almost as long as I'm a hockey coach. So listen to me when I tell you, when you want the quality work and craftsmanship, come and see the boys over at Bella. They serve all 5 boroughs, Westchester, Long Island, all the way out to Montauk. Whether you're a Ranger fan, Islander fan, Devils fan, they're going to take care of you no matter what. Make sure you give them a call, 516-561-1018. Let's go, Rangers. All right, boys, bring it in.
Hey, Coach Ed, what's going on? This is Cousin Dru here. Thanks for joining via Zoom. I know technology is difficult for people your age, but we appreciate you joining. We're trying to go outside the box here with this coaching search. We liked Laviolette, but we're looking at some fresh faces, and I heard some great things about you over there in the AAU, right? That's where you were coaching?
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, and let's just see where this goes. So, you know, tell us a little bit just generally, about your coaching style. How would you describe it?
Well, I do consider myself a defense first coach. I feel that things have to start from your goalie out. Like we talk about often, the pucks have to get out of your zone, into the other zone, and kept down the other end. And that's how you win games, when the pressure is down the other end. So we need to have discipline in our defensive zone, from the goaltender to the D to the forwards in the right position. I play more of a hybrid type of man-on-man in the defensive zone. I'm not going to have a man stick with their guy the whole time. It's more of a kind of like basketball, where it's man-on-man, but it's a zone, quote unquote. So that's the way I like to do it. I like to have guys have responsibilities to an area and switch off to create less confusion, and not
Yeah. So,
have the other team throw picks and create openings.
hey, so you must have been watching a lot of Ranger games this year because we ran pretty much a man on man with Peter and Phil. So we're looking at the personnel here. Is that something you're going to bring in here, that you're going to change the man on man system? You think that would work better with our personnel, or do you think we need new personnel on the back end? Where are you at? I'm
I'm
assuming you've
comfortable
watched a
with
lot
the
of tape.
I'm comfortable with the personnel that we have there. We have a good group of about, what do we have, 8 defensemen, or 8 or 9 defensemen right now. So I think we can make those guys work. Most of them are proven NHLers that played on some successful teams. We just, a matter of implementing discipline and the team culture that we need to establish. And I think the guys will come together.
So, I mean, we got to get some guys under contract. That's not your problem,
Well,
but
that's your
obviously,
job.
yeah. So Keandre and Zach Jones, they need new deals. So we got to look at that. But assume we run back the same D. We're talking about defense here. Would you be the one that you'd want to make those pairings and have some control over that, or would you really lean on your assistant to be the one that controls that? Would you oversee it? How would you interact with the defensive coach as far as making the pairings?
Well, in the past, I've always felt that the head coach's job in any sport is to make final decisions on personnel. So I would confer with my defensive coach, probably game by game, post game or pre game going into the next night, and say, "What if he says, let's try this?" I'll think about it. I'll say, "No, let's stick with it," whatever the case is. But it'll definitely be an open discussion with all the coaches before every game, or after every practice, or before every practice, and decisions will be made on what we can try and what our ideas are. I'm not going to be necessarily the guy who says it's this way or no way, but there has to be an open line of communication on a regular basis.
Yeah. So would you take input from up above? If it came from me or it came from even higher than me, would you be willing to alter the lineup in that instance, or are you going to be, this is my lineup and that's the way I go?
Well, I feel like I said before, we need to create a team culture. So I think if I'm hired, that has to be a meeting between myself, the general manager, the owner, and possibly the coaching staff at some point, and discuss, including the AHL coaches, discuss what we're striving for. because I always feel like I've referenced the Bobby Cox analogy, where we need to bring in players when needed because of injuries or whatever the situation is that have to seamlessly fit into a lineup. They shouldn't be learning a man-to-man defense within one practice or on a chalkboard. So that system needs to be played at least to the AHL level, and everybody should be on that same page. And as far as personnel, I feel that the general manager and coaches should be on the same page come draft day and trade deadline to make correct personnel decisions to get the right guys to fit into our system.
All
So
right.
I'd love to have that open communication on a regular basis with the GM. Also, if the owner would like to be involved, that's fine with me too. He owns the team. He's definitely going to have a decision at some point.
Yeah. So if the owner says, coach, you're hired, you got to play Keandre with Fox 20 plus minutes a night. You okay with that, or are you going to push back?
No, that's not going to be. That can't be the way the team is run. It has to be on a coach's perspective. Like I said, between the coaches, the GM have a handle on the team, unless it's an owner that's at every game, involved with the team in the locker room, at practices. If it's that kind of owner, maybe you can have a discussion with him, but any owner has to give the coaches his chance to coach.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you there. Everyone's got to do their role. All right, so on the spot right now, we run the same D back. Keandre, Fox, Susie, Borgen, Schneider, Jones, Vakanainen. What are your six pairs? What are your 60? Your three pairs? What are you doing?
Well, I really like the way Foxy was playing. Don't forget, you got the kid Robertson also in the back end. I thought he played a couple of good games. I know Pete fans are on him a lot.
He's a big boy.
There wasn't a lot of pressure because of the Rangers were out of it. So yeah, that does take a little bit off it. But I watched him the 2 or 3 games he was in, and I thought he played a very stable game. So I wouldn't discount him being in the lineup. He played well with Fox. I didn't see much out of Keandre with Fox, so I don't know what I would do as far as that goes. I might be more inclined to play Schneider, which I've talked about a lot with some personnel. I want to give Schneider that chance to have that stable. He's been in the back burner a couple of years now, 3 years. And if he comes back from this injury strong, I can't see not giving Schneider a chance to playing up with Foxy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I love that kid. I mean, we drafted him, and I wouldn't include him in a few trades throughout, for some really good players. So I'd love to see him get more of an opportunity. I'm glad you identify that. But so if you put Schneider with Fox, I mean, what else would you do? And also, look, obviously, I know you need to have a training camp and assess people, but just generally right now, if you had to make the call, what would you do?
I would probably go Fox, Schneider. I'd go Keandre with either Susie or Borgen, and then Vakanainen on the back end with Susie or Jones. Maybe Robertson, depending on the camp, or depending on what moves you make in the off season.
But do you think that a
Those
move
would be
needs to
my.
be made on? Do you think a move needs to be made on the back end?
I don't know if Keandre earned that kind of money, to be honest with you. I'm not in your position, but the market shows that he probably can get a very good salary. He had a stretch of about 10 or 12 games that I thought he was really coming along, and then he disappears again. And I mean, Kreider has that reputation as well of being a little inconsistent, but when you're a defenseman, it's a lot more magnified, and we can't really afford that around the net. We need to start from the goal out, and that's got to be very strong. So
Well,
again, that remains to be seen.
From the goal, coach, you'd agree we're good there. I mean, with Quickie and Shesterkin.
Very stable. You can't ask for much more of a better pair than that right now. With the right team in front of them and the right system, it should be that's the least of our worries.
So I'm not going to get into the contract conversations I've had with Keandre's agent or whatever, but that's up in the air right now. I'll just say that, and obviously that stays in this room. So we'll see what it looks like in training camp. But I want to talk leadership with you. You're coaching at the college level right now. I'm assuming you have leaders on that team. Not like travel hockey, minor league hockey. This is college level, right? So let's talk leadership. There's been big issues in our room, without getting into specifics. I'm not going to reveal that here in the interview. You'll learn more if you get the job. I'm sure you've seen the news and heard the rumors. So, you step in, we hire you as coach as opposed to Sullivan, who obviously, I love Sullivan, right? So, I mean, you'd really have to impress me here to get it over him. But do you come in, do you name a captain? Or do you go a year without a captain? Where do you go with that? Do you think that's important?
I think it's very important. I think from the get-go, before training camp, that has to happen in the middle of the summer, right after the draft happens, because the captain and assistant captain should take care of meeting up with the rookies before training camp, getting them acclimated to the practice facility and bringing them into the team where they're feeling more comfortable, to make them at ease. And they have to control that room. They have to make everybody feel the same way as far as the rookies coming in, that everybody's got to compete for a job and make everybody work hard and, keep the competition fun and make that culture we're talking about.
So how would you go about picking a captain if it's in the summer? I mean, obviously getting all the players together be difficult. They're all over the place. I'm sure you know that. They're on vacation, they're working out, they're back home, whatever. You want to pick a captain over the summer. Is this something you want to pick? Is this something you'd let the players pick? Is there a certain group of players you'd let pick it? How would you do that?
Well, I would probably confer with you because you've been around the team for the last 6 or 7 years right now.
Well, I picked Truba, and look how that ended up. So,
well, Truba was a very good captain. I'm not going to say that he was a bad captain. As far as being a captain, I thought he did the right things a lot. He brought the team together in a few ways when they made the playoff run a couple of years ago. But I would probably have in-person meetings with whoever we could individually, and probably Zoom meetings with every other individual, asking them certain questions that couldn't make it if they were training. If they're not training hard with a commitment to somewhere, then they would have to get to New York and have an interview with the team, with the coaching staff. And again, that'll show commitment. That'll show a culture where they're not able to go about their business. Their commitment should be to the team. They're getting paid a lot of money, most of them.
If I said to you right now, pick a captain and 3 assistants, that's it. Who are you picking?
Most likely, depending on captain, I would say JT Miller, Trocheck. I would say if Kreider stays, I would like having Kreider, and I would go with Fox.
So JT Miller is captain with Trocheck, Fox, and Kreider?
Yes.
I mean, let's talk about Kreider, right? I mean, the guy's been a Ranger for 13 years. Obviously, you see the rumors. They don't come out of nowhere. How would you feel if you're hired and subsequent to that, I move a guy like Kreider in a trade? Number one, how would you feel about that? And number two, how would you handle the room? That obviously is going to create some ripples in the room.
Well, that's again, most other teams in the league have been through this. Not most, probably every team, including championship teams. It has to be a given. Of course, you develop relationships, just like coaches develop relationships and they get fired or they have to go to another team. They choose. It's got to be a place where, again, when open lines of communication are there, you speak with players, you know what's going on. The team knows what's going on. They hear rumors, but you have to have meetings when those kind of issues come up, and you have to make everybody understand that the common goal is to develop a team that's going to be able to compete and win a championship. You have to have everybody pulling on the same rope.
Is the cowboy hat, is that like a gimmick, or do you actually wear that during the games? How does that work?
That's going to be worn on the bench. I hate to tell you, it comes with me.
Okay, it comes with you. So there's no, if owner says, hey, no cowboy hat, like you're not taking the job?
I'll take the job without a cowboy hat.
So you take it without the cowboy. Okay. I mean, I don't know how he's going to feel about it. I don't care. But, the cowboy hat thing, you show up to the interview in a cowboy hat. It's a little are you an actual cowboy or you just like the hat?
I'm just an old-fashioned, down-to-earth guy. I wore it during a game, not as a goof. I've always had cowboy hats that I've worn. I wore it as kind of a goof during a game, and one parent said to me, "You look great. You got to stick with it. We won the game, and From then on, I just stuck with it, changed it a few times, but it's always a staple. Coaches around the league, referees around the league, they all know who I am. It just creates a personality.
Yeah, I mean, when we did our research, I noticed that you were always wearing the hat, so I wasn't sure if it was a gimmick or if that's like an actual part of your personality. If you're out there, as an actual cowboy, I'm not
Well,
sure.
back in the
So,
day, back in the early 30s and 40s, a lot of guys, baseball, football coaches, not baseball coaches, but football coaches, hockey coaches, they wore the fedora.
like 1930s and 1940s, you're talking about?
Well, I'm not alive that long, but yes.
Would you consider a fedora over a cowboy hat? Is that something you'd be open to?
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad.
All right, all right. Um, so, I want to talk about like your interaction with the GM a little bit. You mentioned before you like open lines of communication. So, what if there's a situation where I want to move a guy or acquire a guy, and I think this player deserves top 6 minutes or power play time, and it's a young guy or a skilled guy, whatever, and you don't really agree, based on what you're seeing or in his game, either day to day in practice or on during the games. Um, how would you handle that? Is that something, because look, the way I'll just be open with you, the way I operate is I hire a coach, I let the coach make the lineups. Obviously, I talk to you. I'm not going to tell you to scratch someone or not. How would you approach that if I go out and acquire a guy like, say, Pavel Bushnevich, for example, and I want you to play him on the top line and power play, and you don't agree? Would you just scratch him? Would you call me? How would you handle that communication?
I would hope that before you acquire any players, you're gonna call me. We'll have a meeting. We'll discuss personnel decisions, what we need, what the team needs, what's working, and if that player would fit into our lineup, into our system. I would hope that it's a mutual communication, that we're going to talk to each other, and you're not just going to make decisions based on what you feel we need.
Well, I make
Because
decisions based on what's best for the organization, right? As you can see from the prior coaches' shelf life in the NHL isn't very long usually. So I got to make decisions that will potentially outlast whatever coaching hire I make. So we may not agree on a decision. My question is, if I'm obviously going to call you and tell you what I'm thinking, but if I agree this guy's a long-term fit for this organization, and you don't agree, and I say, I want to try it, are you open to that? Is that something you're open to, or are you just going to put your foot down? Because we have to get along in order for this to work, right?
well, how long is that? How long does the trial have to last?
I don't know. We give it 5-10 games. See
Period.
if you're a couple shifts. Let's see.
Look,
Let's
again,
see if it
it has to be an open line of communication and discussion. If the team is moving well and we're in the right direction, then I don't feel it should be we should disrupt anything. That's one thing. If we feel it's a player that can come in and help our team immediately, seamlessly. Again, I look back to other teams. John Cooper has players that come and go, and if they get the right players with the right attitude and right compete level and right skill for certain situations, they fit in seamlessly. And that's why Tampa's been successful for the last 8 or 10 years, no matter
well,
what move they make.
you know that as the GM, I do get the final say in what personnel you deploy. I mean, so at the end of the day, if we disagree, I can make that decision.
Of
So
course you can, but that's not going to bode well for the culture of the team and the any kind of animosities we start developing. That's just going to create rifts in the locker room, create rifts amongst players. So I would hope that you have that ability to figure out certain decisions together.
all right. So should I sign Keandre or should I trade him?
I would sign him, but I wouldn't give him any kind of an astronomical money. I would go no more than 3 years. I would go no more than like $3.5 million a year. But he's got to earn some more.
Well, he
more
just made
before he gets the big money.
he just made 3.8, so he's not going to take a pay cut.
Well, then I give him three. I give him 3.85.
I think he made 3.
I don't think he's played well enough. I don't think he's played well enough to deserve a large raise.
don't worry about the numbers. I'll worry about the cap. You know, don't worry. He made 3,875 or whatever. He's not going to take a pay cut. But you're saying that you'd give him more time as the coach. You'd be willing to give him more time in a different defensive system, couple years.
I would give him to this trade deadline. He's already had 3 to 4 years right now in the NHL playing with some high-level defensemen. I think it's time for him to take a step to the next level. If we can't help him do that, or if he's not responding to the coaching, then I would say it's time for him to find a new environment.
Do you think you could unlock that in him?
I'm going to give him enough time. I'm going to give him a pat on the back when he deserves it, but he's going to know when he's making mistakes over and over.
All right. So, look, I want to go back. You said you'd make JT the captain, and you'd go Trocheck, Fox, and who's your other assistant?
Kreider, if he's around.
So, you know, right now we have Mika and Panarin as assistant captains. So, if you were to do that, you know, we'd have to strip them of a letter. You know, how would you handle that in the room? I mean, would you talk to them beforehand? I don't know. What would you do?
100%. Each player has to know what's coming. They have to know what's going on. It shouldn't be. They shouldn't find out through the media or social media. You know, it should come from one of us first, or if not both.
Well, this interview leaked before it happened, so I mean, here we are, right? So everything leaks.
We got to find that guy who's leaking information, and we got to stop that first. Everything should stay within the organization. So
yeah, I hear this podcast. This guy Little Ed keeps leaking things out on Instagram. So I don't know. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, it's tough, right? I mean,
I would sit down those two players and say the team is moving in a different leadership direction. We still need them to be successful. We need them in the locker room. Any veteran player needs to act like he's a captain or assistant captain, no matter what. So they should, you know, buy into the system. And if they don't want to, and if they're going to pout, then that's going to be up to you to get them to where they need to be, as far as on our team or somewhere else. Because we need to create that culture that everybody is going in the same direction, not two players going their own way.
Well,
everybody needs to play a game.
You know, a lot of players this year have been pouting on this team. It's been an issue all season. You know, I've been trying to maneuver through that. I don't blame Laviolette for it, but as you know, whoever is the next coach is really going to have to do some extra work that I guess a normal situation a coach wouldn't have to deal with. Which brings me to my next question. You know, so you're coming in. This would be your first job in the NHL. In your mind, what is the number one characteristic? And it can be general or specific, it's up to you, that a team needs to win the Stanley Cup?
The number one characteristic, as far as playing, or?
It's up to you, Coach. You answer the question.
Needs to be a defense-first characteristic. That's got to be, and even a player like Panarin, I don't expect him to be blocking shots, but I expect him to be busting his ass on the back check somewhat to cover his own. And every player needs to do that. It needs to be a total commitment to the system, not 15 out of 18 skaters, not 14 out of 18. It needs to be every player. Every successful team in the playoffs has every player pulling together, diving in front of pucks for some guys, back checking for other guys, skating hard through the neutral zone, getting off on a line change. Every little thing means something, and everybody has to commit to those little things.
Do you think this team has that?
I think we have a good core on this team. I think we have a very good core that we could turn this around with the right mental attitude if we can get the guys together and have some fun.
You know, Peter said the same thing. Gallant said the same thing. You sure?
I think we have a good core of guys. And they have to know it's either put up or shut up time. And we need to, like I said, create that culture from the AHL up and have the next man up mentality. If you're not going to do it, we're going to bring in the next guy. We have a lot of young talent available, and they have to know they're going to sit on the bench. They all have to be held accountable no matter who it is.
Would you be willing to hold a guy like Artemi accountable if he's not
100%.
back checking or too lackadaisical on the ice? Would you scratch him or bench him?
I would have conversations with him from training camp forward, and I would make it clear what we need from him and what we need to do to win. Create some visual examples of, say, Alexander Ovechkin, the commitment level Malkin has, the commitment level Crosby has at this time of their career, and what it takes to win. And he needs to see that. And if he doesn't produce, then that's going to have a meeting between me and you, and we're going to see what we're going to do about that.
Well, he's got a no move clause, so there's not much I can do about it. But
Well,
he's got only 1 year left, coach.
And we can't let a player like him get away with things and expect rookies to push themselves to the limit and not be held accountable when they have to be held accountable. It's like raising children.
I agree there. So, that brings me up to another issue I was going to bring up with you.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I'm not afraid of it.
Okay. Well, do you believe that certain young players need to be thrust into some prominent roles on the roster quickly, even if they haven't earned it at the NHL level? Or do you think that everybody has to earn it by coming up, do fourth line, third line, second line, progress that way? Or some guys like maybe a Gabe Perreault, you see him as like he comes in, he's top six power play, and he doesn't have to deal with the block shots, third line mentality?
Well, then what are we going to do? My question to you is we have to sit down and say, who are we moving down to that bottom six role, or what are we going to do? Because you're going to have to deal with the attitude of the player we move down. So everything has to be a team effort from the owner down.
Well, it's your job to do that, right?
Well, it is my job to say we need to do this, but I have to go to you and we have to say, I'm moving Perreault to the second line. Lafreniere is going to be down to the third line. Be prepared. There's going to be some complaining, but we need to be on the same page. Where you can't say to him, well, that's the coach's decision. I have no part of it. You have to say to him, we want to see this young talent. I need you to push it to third line, and we need to be on the same page. And that's how you're going to create that culture I'm talking about.
Well, do you agree that certain players, you develop them for those top line roles versus bottom six roles? Maybe a guy, I look at like an Adam Edstrom, prototypical bottom six player. Love the kid, but no problem with him coming up 22, 23, playing on the fourth line, but maybe I wouldn't really want an Hoffman to play in that role.
Well, it's hard to do that when you don't have the spot to do it. If we already have established top six, we have to move somebody out to give that kid a chance. So that either gives him more time to develop in a top six role at the AHL level with the Wolfpack, or we're going to have to move someone out and deal with that personnel, deal with that kind of a character issue, how they're going to respond. So it's got to be a situation where it goes player by player and the timing has to be right. See how it is in training camp. We have to establish that everybody's fighting for that spot in training camp. So if Lafreniere comes in and has a bad training camp, then he'll be the one to be moved down to the third line. No problem with that. If Perreault comes in and has a fantastic training camp and he's lighting it up, then we give him a shot on the second line or the second power play or whatever. It all has to be earned at some point, in my opinion.
Well, it definitely has to be earned. I agree there. But yeah, there's some players that, when Alexi was drafted and brought in, he played a lot of third line minutes. He still really hasn't established himself on the power play. I think this is going to be year 6 or 7 for him in the NHL. He's the number 1 overall pick. So we just don't want to make those same mistakes again going forward. There's certain young guys that we want the next coach to give an opportunity. If Perreault makes some mistakes, are you going to just bury him on the bench with 5 minutes to go?
It depends on how often he's making those mistakes. If he makes a mistake here and there, everybody does that. But if he can't chip the puck off the wall 3 times in a row, then no, he's not going to be in the last 5 minutes of the game when we need it. If it happens once or twice a game, it's going to happen to everybody. But if the same mistake is made over and over, then you have to earn that trust, not only from the coach, but from your teammates. Because you have 17 other players on the bench going, why is he out there? He can't get the puck out of the zone. We need this game. It also depends on the situation in the standings we're at. Are we at a situation where we're fighting for first place, or are we fighting for 5th or 6th place? So you're allowed. You could have more you could have more leniency if if we're developing kids and we're in the 5th or 6th place position, but we have a
Well,
core of guys that
this
we can
isn't
make a
San
move.
Jose, so
Well,
you won't be doing
that's
that.
why we should be, you give them chances, but if they're not figuring it out or asking questions or working hard at it, then you have to make some decisions in game and in practice. That's a game by game situation.
All right, just a couple more questions for you, and we'll wrap this up. I know your time is valuable. So we got analytics team here. An analytics team. They're excellent. They really come out with the expected goals. Or the goaltending. Goals saved above expected, and we got all kinds of numbers running through here daily that are passed on to the coaching staff. Are you someone that's throwing that in the trash bin, or are you looking at it?
Again, just like I'm a hybrid type of defensive coach, I'm going to utilize some of that information, take it into account, but I'm not going to live and die by it. The goals that saved above expected tells me that if it's a high number, that we're letting up too many grade A chances. So that's telling me we're not playing tight enough defense. If I have a goalie that's facing 18 of those a game and he's doing really well at it, that's great. But that's a leak in the system, and that's only going to fail. You're only going to sink the boat after a while. So that's a situation where I'm going to take that stat, and I'm not going to so much praise the goalie because he's number 1 in the league or top 5 in the league, but I'm going to say to the team, we need to right the ship, and we need to figure things out because we're letting up way too many of that. Most of the stats I'm going to look at analytic-wise is getting pucks out of the zone, defensive first passes out of the zone into the breakout, who's dumping the puck in at certain times of the game when we need it, who's making too many lateral passes and giveaways, and that's going to be an eye test along with analytics.
Well, when it comes to zone exits and zone entries, we got one of the best in the game with Fox, so that'll be interesting. So do you think Fox, being how good he is, I was with Team USA at the Four Nations. Sullivan was there, Tortorella. We talked about Fox a little bit. He got demoted during that tournament. Do you think he can be a number 1 D for this team that wins the Stanley Cup, or do you think we need to consider, his no move clause kicks in July 1st, so this is a decision we got to make soon on him?
I mean, unless you're getting a very high level defenseman or Connor McDavid, he could definitely be a defenseman that could win it with us if he has the right partner.
So he needs a partner. What kind of partner would you want for
I
Fox?
like Schneider. I like a physical player. Like I said, he took a little bit off this year, Schneider, but we've heard that he's had some shoulder problems. He's had surgery. If he comes back 100% healthy and we have a physical D back there where Fox doesn't have to go battle in corners as much or take a beating as much, we're going to need a player. And I think Schneider has that attitude to accept that role and take that beating for the good of the cause.
So how do you get these players to play more north-south? Because, Quinn tried it, Gallant tried it, Labby tried it, and it works for a few games, and then they just don't do it. So what would you do if this is the group and I don't make any moves? What are you going to do to make them play north-south?
They're going to have to be benched at a certain point in certain situations in the game. It's just that simple. There's nothing else you can do. If you can't trade him or sell him off or whatever the case is, they're going to lose playing time, and maybe they'll come to you and say, trade me. I'm not, this team isn't for me. They have to know it's our culture or nothing, and that has to come from you, me, and the coaching staff, and it has to stick to it. If you want to create that I don't want to say dynasty as far as winning championships, but being competitive year after year with a chance of winning championships, then you have to create that culture. Every successful team has the right playoff mentality. If you don't, you're knocked out of the playoffs. You see with Toronto, they're not strong defensively. They haven't won a series in how many years?
Well, we agree. We got to be stronger defensively. We need a new system here.
And part of that defensive system comes from puck possession in the other zone. So if those turnovers in the neutral zone are causing our defense, again, if you want to go by analytics, talk about turnovers in the neutral zone, that reflect on how much zone time is in our defensive zone. And then you have to show the team that. Look what happened here. Yeah, so on and so forth. It's got to happen. They have to get a visual of it, and they have to buy in. Again, Alexander Ovechkin bought in, and they won. If you don't buy in, if the team doesn't buy in, no matter how good you are, you're not going to be successful.
All right, so we'll just end on this question. What identity would you want this team to have? Every team needs an identity. So what would be the identity you try to instill if you had to summarize it without being wordy?
I want to play 60-minute games from the drop of the puck to the end of the game as hard as we can. Roll 4 lines pretty much in certain situations, and I want every player to be playing everything they got for every shift. That's got to be when a coach comes in and say we're playing the Rangers, I want them to say to their team, guys, you know what we're in for. We need to work hard. They're going to be busting their ass. We need to work as hard or harder. They have to have that mentality that they're coming in to play the Rangers. It's going to be a challenge.
Well, Coach, you did a great job in this interview. Appreciate it. We'll get back to you soon. We're going to consider all options here, and we'll go from there. We got some good candidates out there. I don't want you to get your hopes up, but we got your resume on the Indeed.com posts. It came in, and there were some spelling errors, and the font. It looked kind of informal, which I like personally, because it shows that you're an old school guy. It looked like it might have been typed by a child, but good resume, and it was a pleasure speaking with you. And we'll get back to you soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, we'll get back to you.